You're smart, you're thoughtful, and yet you still edit yourself mid-sentence. You say it, then you soften it. You feel clear in the moment, but then spiral 5 minutes later, walking back your point because you're already managing how it might land, trying to make it easier for someone else to receive because you don't trust that what you said made sense. And that habit that you think is being cautious is just another form of quiet burnout, masquerading as being careful. You want to speak clearly and confidently without second guessing every word. But instead of feeling grounded when you share your truth, you feel the internal tension rising mid sentence, like you're watching yourself from the outside, editing your tone, scanning the faces around you, softening your points just to feel safe enough to keep going. And it's not because anyone else is judging you, but because you're already bracing for how you'll feel about it later. And so it becomes less about you not having anything to say, to instead being more about making sure that what you do say is something that you don't have to apologize for later. Because if it lands wrong, if it sounds off, if it makes someone uncomfortable, you'll carry the weight of it long after the conversation ends. This is emotional burnout that doesn't start with your words. It starts with self-trust. And today I'm going to show you a simple way to interrupt the self-doubt loop that keeps you second guessing your voice so that you can take the pressure off your words and start speaking with more clarity and confidence. But before we start, I want to introduce myself. Hello, I'm 𝗲𝗺cie𝘁𝗶cie I'm a self-care strategist and founder of Her Extraordinary Life by Design and creator of the Yes Reset Method, my three-step system I use to help high-achieving women like you set up a life you don't need a vacation from so that you can grow a business you love with less guilt and more freedom. Now, if your brain keeps spiraling after everyday conversations, replaying how you said it, wondering if it came out wrong or if you should have said less, and you just want to feel free to speak and trust your voice enough to say what you mean without the aftershock, stay with me because in just a bit, I'm going to walk you through a real-time strategy that you can use to help yourself stop that second guessing loop before it drains your clarity so that you can actually feel confident in your conversations and finally speak without apologizing for how much space you take up. But before we get to that, let's talk about the hidden burnout loop behind why you keep editing yourself mid-sentence, even when no one in the room is judging you. If you've been noticing yourself constantly rewording, rephrasing, or holding back, even in safe spaces, it's not necessarily because you don't know what you want to say, but more likely because somewhere along the way, you started believing that saying what you mean might come at a cost, even if it makes sense, even if it's directly in line with the subject matter. Now let's look at how that actually might be happening. You pause mid-sentence, not because someone else in the room is questioning you, but because you are. There's the background loop going through your mind where you're already reviewing what you're about to say and anticipating how it might land. And this is not coming from an empowering, strategic way we talk about in leadership, but in the quiet, draining way that makes every word feel like it has weight, like it might tip something over, trigger a reaction, change how you're seen. So what do? You overfilter your words, even in conversation where there's trust, because this habit of self-correction isn't situational, it's internal. It's become the way your nervous system protects you. It's why you rehearse the tone in your head before you even speak. It's why you adjust your posture, your face, your pitch mid-thought, because you've been operating this way for so long where you just don't trust yourself. And it's become your coping mechanism because it doesn't feel safe to just be fully you. It's from having to manage how you show up every time you speak. The words may be short, the conversation may seem casual, but the energy cost of monitoring yourself so tightly is massive because you're not just saying what you mean, you're actually watching yourself saying it. You're editing it as it leaves your mouth, and you're already thinking about whether you should have said it at all. This is how emotional burnout can become even bigger, making your voice get smaller and smaller every time you use it because you're emotionally exhausted for always having your filter button on. Now, this is all about survival mode, showing up inside your own conversations as a form of protection, thinking that if you filter it enough, you'll be safe enough to speak without worrying how you'll feel about it later. And when that becomes your default, well, it's no wonder that just being yourself feels like effort. Now, does that make sense? Okay, now I want to touch on why I believe that sounding like you're too much isn't the real fear, and that it's actually what your inner critic is telling you afterwards that's keeping you small. Let's say, for all intents and purposes, that you already know how to read a room. You already know how to soften your edges. You already know how to shrink your sentences just enough to sound more agreeable. But what if I told you the fear isn't really about how they'll respond to you? It's actually about how you'll respond to yourself. It's not even what happens in the moment that's the hardest. It's what happens afterwards. Because even if no one pushes back, you still go home and replay the whole thing, wondering if you sounded too harsh, too emotional, or just too much. You'll replay it over and over in your head, asking yourself if you came on too strong, if you made someone uncomfortable, if you should have said it differently or not at all. And that spiral of second guessing isn't coming from the fear of others judging you as much as it's coming from rejecting yourself, from rejecting that what you said made sense, that it landed well, was good enough. It's emotional self-rejection on autopilot. And when that becomes your default, speaking up never feels like relief, does it? It feels like regret waiting to happen, like you're always 5 minutes away from regretting being fully seen. This is why you downplay your wins. This is why you over-explain simple decisions. This is why even when someone says, no, no, you're fine, I didn't take it that way at all, you still don't believe them because that voice in your head that questions you the most is your own. You've trained yourself to believe that you're too much. And so you pull back as a way to avoid the guilt loop that kicks in the moment that your boldness makes you uncomfortable. And here's the thing. You think the risk is in what you say, but the real risk is in what you make it mean about you after you've said it. That's why editing your voice feels safer than owning it. It's not just about control. It's about protection from your own criticism, from shame, and from fear that if you take up space, you won't know how to handle the feelings that come after. Now, you've probably told yourself that you just need to be more confident, right? That if you could just stop overthinking, the words would flow naturally. But here's the truth. When your internal system is wired to filter everything you say through caution, self-doubt, and emotional risk assessment, of course your voice feels shaky. Of course you walk it back. Of course you over-explain yourself. It's not about pushing yourself to speak louder to sound more authoritative. It's about rebuilding trust in the way you think so that you stop questioning who you are every time you speak. Because if you don't trust your voice when it's still in your head, you'll always second guess it after it leaves your lips. But when you believe that your voice is valid, you don't need permission to use it. So here's what I teach my clients in moments like this. Instead of asking, did I say the right thing? Ask yourself, was I being honest with myself when I said it? Meaning, did I really mean that? Is it something I believe myself to be true? Am I being authentic about what I'm saying? Self-trust doesn't start with performing to sound the best, the smartest, the one who is most in control. It starts with trusting that what you're saying is real, that it's grounded and aligned with what you actually believe. Because when you stop trying to manage the reaction and you start trusting your intention, that's when your voice becomes steady again. And that's the first thing we rebuild together. That's exactly why I teach my self-acceptance and trust framework, because self-trust isn't some vague concept. It's built through small, repeatable signals. It's built through three key capacities: your internal validation, which is your ability to approve your own decisions without needing outside confirmation. It works because it gives you immediate access to clarity without waiting for permission or praise so that you can move forward with confidence instead of spiraling in self-doubt. It's built through emotional honesty, which is the skill of being radically truthful with yourself about what you want, what feels right to you, and what doesn't. It works because it short circuits overthinking before it begins so that you're not performing alignment, you're actually living it. And it's built through self integrity, which is your ability to follow through between what you say, what you mean, and how you act. And it works because it builds an unshakable baseline of trust with yourself so that when you speak, you don't need to manage the outcome because you know you showed up in full alignment. Now, each one plays a different role, but all of them help you speak, decide, and show up from truth, not fear. Now, let me walk you through what that can look like in a real life moment. Let's say you're in a team Zoom meeting. You've got an idea that you believe will be incredibly valuable to the next steps on the project that you're all working on. You've even rehearsed how you're going to say it. But the second the spotlight shifts your way, you feel your throat start to tighten up. You start the sentence strong, but halfway through, you soften your tone. You hear yourself add the word maybe. You glance at a face on the screen and you change your wording to make it more palatable. And even though no one challenges you, you leave the meeting replaying every word you said, wondering if you came across too direct or not clear enough or like you were trying too hard. That's where that emotional honesty kicks in. Because the question isn't just, what did I say? It's, was that true to what I meant or just easier to say? Here's where my self acceptance and trust framework comes into play, not after the spiral, but before it starts. It's you having an internal filter that you walk yourself through before you get on the call, and where you ask yourself, am I about to say what I really mean or what I think they'll accept? You've rehearsed it in your head. And so asking yourself this will help you to really hone in on what the real issue is, why you're second guessing what you already know to be true. That's internal validation in action. For example, maybe the real issue isn't that you don't know what to say, but more that you're afraid you'll sound harsh or self-important. You've been conditioned to believe that if you take up too much space, you'll be too much. So even though the idea is clear, the fear is if I say it directly, will they think I'm full of myself? The next thing is, am I softening this because I'm unclear or because I'm bracing for judgment, not necessarily from them, but from myself? You've had a pattern for so long where you've not been able to trust that you know what you mean and you mean what you say. So this question helps you identify the real root of that hesitancy. And this is where self-integrity becomes your anchor. For example, the root may be a long history of over-apologizing to stay safe, of keeping things nice so no one misunderstands you. It could be about fear of judgment from others, but it's also about not trusting that you'll have your own back after the conversation ends. And then what's the emotional cost if I don't say it clearly right now? This is the hardest one because it shines a light on the internal loop that you've been living in, maybe for years. You've told yourself it's no big deal, but deep down the cost has added up. For example, you might believe the cost is that you'll sound less polished, less professional, but the real cost is emotional erosion, meaning you walk away from every conversation with a nagging feeling that you shrank a little, that you played small again, that you had the opportunity to lead, contribute, or speak clearly, but you traded it for safe. And that repeated choice that's quietly teaching your nervous system that your voice isn't trustworthy, it's in those moments when your voice feels shaky and your brain's already rewriting what you just said. And that's when you need something to anchor you back to what you already knew before doubt crept in. Not to push through, not to perform confidence, but to pause and to choose to trust yourself from alignment, not from fear. Because it's not about proving yourself right. It's about being rooted in what's true for you so that you can speak without needing to shrink, soften, or explain it away. When you say what you mean with clarity, you don't have to manage how it lands, right? You don't have to go home and process it for the next 5 hours. You just speak. And that clarity feels like freedom. That's why rebuilding self-trust isn't just about confidence. It's about creating an internal system that protects your energy, your clarity, and your voice. It's how you stop shrinking to stay safe and start showing up fully aligned with what's true for you, especially in those moments that used to make you second guess yourself. The self-acceptance and trust framework is one of the core tools I teach my clients, and it's also supported by the Yes Reset method because a huge part of what we do together is reset the pressure-driven patterns that quietly drain your energy, your clarity, and your confidence so that you can enjoy your life while running a business that you love with less guilt and more freedom. So let me ask you this. Are you caught in a loop of overthinking everything you say? And are you aware of how much energy that you're using, that you're losing, not from what you say, but from constantly questioning how you said it? And if nothing shifts, what is that going to keep costing you? Because here's the truth. Filtering your words might feel safer in the moment, but over time, it costs you more than you think. It can cost you your clarity, your peace, and your trust in your own voice. And this is where the deeper work begins because the solution isn't pushing yourself to be more confident. It's resetting the patterns that are quietly draining your energy and clarity in the first place. You know, a lot of high performing women think that they need tighter time management, better boundaries, a different planner to stop feeling overwhelmed. And in order to be seen as an authority, that they must speak louder, more boldly, so they can be seen as the expert in their field, the expert in the room. But if you want to stay clear, calm, and confident in your decisions before your energy is gone and to trust your voice, you don't need more discipline. You need a better system for how you say yes so that you trust yourself. That's where the Yes Reset method comes in. Having the 3-question yes filter, having a way to categorize your decisions, and also being able to protect your yes energy. And here's why it works so well. The 3-question yes filter is a fast internal checkpoint that you run through before saying yes to get grounded in what truly matters. Asking yourself, is this in alignment with my current focus? Would I be saying yes out of alignment, obligation, guilt, or fear? What am I trading for this yes? Because every time that you say yes to something, you're closing the door to something else, right? And so this works so well because it allows you to get clear on what's aligned and what's emotional noise so that you can stop defaulting to pressure-based yes decisions that drain your time and energy. And then you learn to categorize your decisions like a high-performance CEO, which is a decision lens that helps you instantly sort your options into yes, no, or not right now. And it works because it lets you stop treating every decision like it's urgent or final, so you can focus only on what moves your priorities forward that are in alignment for right now. And then finally, protecting your yes energy, which is an energy boundary that helps you catch hesitation, pressure, or self-doubt before it hijacks your clarity, right? It works well because it helps you to spot signs of misalignment before your nervous system goes into overdrive. This is why my clients work with me, because we don't just talk about alignment, we build it together. We create the decision filters, the energy boundaries, and high performance yes systems that let you lead with clarity and peace of mind. And we do it together so that you walk away not just with insight, but with a framework that makes every yes more powerful and every decision less draining. Because having a clear decision-making framework along with an aligned self-acceptance and trust framework are meant to support and help you learn to trust your yes and to stop filtering yourself to be more agreeable so that you start reclaiming the clarity, calm, and confidence you used to feel when you spoke your truth so that you no longer walk away from conversations questioning everything you said for hours. So if you want to know what that could possibly look like for you, then comment below or message me directly. Let's talk about what's quietly draining your energy and what it could look like to protect it in real time so that your voice finally feels like home again. Now, before we wrap up today, remember, constantly filtering, editing, and softening yourself isn't clarity, it's survival. That's the real emotional burnout. And the hardest part is that you've gotten so good at hiding it that most people around you have no idea how loud it is in your head, but you do. And it's not about needing to sound more polished or needing to be more palatable. It's about feeling safe enough to mean what you say and say what you mean. And that safety comes from learning how to anchor yourself before the spiral starts so that you speak without walking on eggshells and protect your clarity without feeling like you have to apologize for being you. Now, if today's message spoke to you, and if you haven't already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and tap the bell so that you don't miss what's coming next. And if there's someone in your life today who's always second guessing their voice and who deserves to feel more peace when they speak, send this video their way. Sometimes it just takes one message to remind them that they're not alone. Thanks for being here. Take good care of you, and I will see you next time.